Ladies and gentlemen, to continue, the next panel will be Competitiveness Dialogue on Building Economic Cities. It's my pleasure to introduce our moderator, the Honorable Deborah Wince-Smith, President of the GFCC. Our panelist, Mr. Fahd Al-Rasheed, Group CEO and Managing Director of the King Abdullah Economic City. Mr. Samih Barbir, Chairman of Abdali Investment and Development, PSC. And Mr. Paul Scialla, CEO of Delos Living.
We've had some fabulous discussion during the 2 days of the GFCC on the trends and role of urbanization, the growth of complex mega cities, and our last panel did a beautiful job, really, of setting the framework for what we're going to do now, which is really turn to hear from 3 leading innovators who are actually designing, building, creating sustainable, creative cities of the future. Cities, we know, are at the very core of the continuum of human civilization, starting some 4,000 years before BC, to begin to aggregate people coming together to live in communities, to create, to communicate, and to really develop the cultures and the civilization that have characterized us as human beings. So I would even say that cities are the very cell of life, and they're the cauldron of creativity. So we're going to hear 3 fabulous, not just prototypes, but real innovations now that are creating this new urban center that is at the heart of competitiveness and how we're going to live, work, create, and create value on many, many levels. So we have 3 fabulous leaders here that are with us. Let me introduce Mr. Fahd Al-Rasheed, who's the Chief Executive Officer and Managing Director of Amar Economic City. And Mr. Fahd, thank you so much for your hospitality and hosting us here in King Abdullah Economic City. We're honored and we're all thrilled to be here. Next to him is Mr. Paul Scialla, who is the founder and CEO of Delos Living in New York City. And next to me is Mr. Samih Barbir, who is the chairman of Abdali Investment and Development Corporation based in Amman. So I'm going to ask each of our distinguished panelists to make some remarks. We do have 2 short video clips we're going to hear, but I think we'd first like to start with our host of the great emerging city here in Saudi Arabia on the Red Sea, Mr. Fahd Al-Rasheed. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I do feel the energy is a bit low. I do feel it. However, there is a quiz. I think you will be excited about this quiz. How many cities and towns are around the world? Go for it.
2 million.
400 cities? There are 400 cities in Saudi Arabia when you take towns into it.
2 million.
Okay, you're getting close. I'm getting scared that you're actually going to get it right. It's 246,000 cities. This is, ladies and gentlemen, the most competitive space in the world. You have 246,000 products that are unique. They're all competing for people and companies and their funds. So to be successful, you really need to have a clear value proposition. To be successful, you really need to have supportive government with clear regulations that actually fit the value proposition that you require. And even then, it's not enough, because to be successful, then you need developer, whether government or private sector, that is capable, competent, and has the right resources. And if you don't have one of these 3, you are doomed. In fact, Governments now are so excited about special economic zones that they've launched 4,000 of them, and most of them are not successful. So what we did in Saudi Arabia is quite a mammoth undertaking. Number one, we wanted to launch a city that was the size of Washington, D.C. from scratch, enough for 2 million people. We wanted to launch a city that was fully developed by the private sector. At this scale, this has never been done before. But the idea was, of the late King Abdullah, that one day the government won't be able to fund everything. One day oil prices will drop. And I think we all know that this conversation is very relevant today. Now, in the process of getting here, we learned a lot. We learned, first and foremost, that it's not about building. It's not the concrete that matters. You can build as many houses as you want. If you don't have jobs, nobody will occupy them. We learned, I'm getting ticklish. That's all. We also learned that it's about the sectors. Each sector, you have to succeed in every sector. You have to succeed if you have a port in ports. You have to succeed in industry if you have industry. You have to, in a commercial setting, you have to have the best value proposition. You have to figure out what smart cities means and what technology means and how to lay it out. Every sector on its own has to be successful. What does it mean to operate a school, to attract students? Every sector has to be learned on its own. And a city is the amalgamation of all of these sectors. And I promise you, throughout the past 10 years, because in December the city will be 10 years old, we have in every sector started, failed, regrouped, and started again. And now I'm very proud to say, after being called the cartoon city, because we had beautiful renders and that's all we showed for a long time, I'm very proud to say that we are exceptionally successful in so many ways. I can give you just a few, and again, I'm not showing off. I'm just trying to say a reality of what it takes to get here, and also what it could do when you actually get there. Number one, we will have, by end of next year, the largest port on the Red Sea, period. We will be the largest. We will be larger than Jeddah port, which is the largest port on the Red Sea, and it's been there for 40 years. We have already the most successful non-oil-based industrial zone in the country. We've attracted 100 companies to operate in our industrial valley, and the area we are actually building right now is larger than Jubail Industrial Zone Phase 1, which was built by the government over 30 years. We are also, and I cannot believe, by the way, I'm saying this, the largest residential developer in the country in an area that doesn't have a population even yet. In 2014, we sold more than anybody else. We are entering now into new sectors, education. We're entering into healthcare, and finally, tourism. You're laughing, right? At the tourism part, I know. There's a lot of smiles. But tourism, we have learned, part of our strategy is, the best strategy is to not compete after competing with 246,000. So we're not trying to compete with Dubai, Paris, London, and all of these great cities around the world. And the good thing is we don't have to. We already have 10 million people, 10 million Saudis that we export every year. We are the 17th most visited country in the world because Hajj and Umrah. So we want to extend that visit for a stay in KAEC. And we are a G20 economy and the largest economy in the Middle East, and we don't have sufficient meeting space. That's why this hotel, although it is a small hotel, a nice hotel, I hope you like it, actually has higher occupancy today because of offsites than Jeddah hotels. So again, by providing the right value proposition, the right strategy, and commitment behind execution, you can develop these cities, but the journey is hard, and it's only for the tough ones, to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fahd. We hope you're going to, at some point, tell us what the recipe is for the secret sauce. Let me turn to Mr. Samih Bahir, and I have had the personal pleasure to be in Abdali for the opening of the Boulevard, the first part of the Abdali initiative last June in Amman, Jordan. And I can tell you, again, it was being part of history, witnessing the opening of this first new sustainable city being built in the heart of one of our great ancient and continuing cities of the world, Amman, Jordan. And so we would love to hear you, but I think first we're going to have a short video.
Well, before the short video and before showing you what we're talking about, just a quick word. That's been quite a bit of a challenge to start, not from scratch, but from an existing old downtown that we had to regenerate and build in it a brand new world standard downtown. So if we can show the video, please. It's a short one.
In the heart of the Middle East lies Jordan, a gateway to the MENA region. Rooted in history, with its unique tourist attractions, advanced infrastructure, a progressive free market economy, political stability, Jordan is a safe haven for international investment. Amman, Jordan's capital, welcomes you to its new downtown, Abdali, a rising, prestigious address where you can live, work, and play. Valued at more than $5 billion US, the new Abdali is the capital's central business district where organizations are set to flourish. Designed to be a modern corporate environment, the new Abdali is a multifunctional space able to accommodate a variety of business needs. It incorporates state-of-the-art communication and technology solutions of the modern workplace, set to redefine the standards of business in Jordan. Abdali is home to a variety of luxury and specialty stores, with unique scenic rooftops and outdoor terraces that offer exquisite food and beverage concepts. The boulevard, the heart of Abdali, adds a spark of contemporary living to the new downtown of Amman. The Abdali Mall is a modern shopping icon that boasts unique open-air features within an aesthetic design. It offers a wide variety of retail shops and entertainment venues. Located at the center of Amman, the new Abdali is the ideal tourist destination, bringing together a mix of the finest hotels and serviced apartments, where visitors can conveniently enjoy the capital's major touristic sites. With its fascinating mix of entertainment and recreational facilities, public piazzas, and lush tree-lined landscapes and avenues, all within walking distance, residents enjoy luxury living with a modern design and layout to suit their vibrant modern lifestyle. Abdali is also home to the most renowned medical centers and clinics that offer patients world-class healthcare services and innovative treatments. Abdali adopts numerous innovative features and environment-friendly practices through state-of-the-art communication systems, district heating and cooling, innovative traffic solutions, and 25,000 parking spots, a pedestrian-friendly environment, landscape spaces, and grey water treatment. Phase 2 of Abdali offers an abundance of development and investment opportunities, anchored by a central park where lavish green spaces and supreme design are intertwined. Phase 2 is comprised of residential towers, modern offices, hotels, and exquisite commercial entertainment areas. Abdali is a true work, live, and play smart city center. This is what Abdali promises to deliver to every visitor and resident, an unmatched experience of vibrant urban living in Amman's new downtown.
Well, Abdali started a while ago. It was a partnership, the typical example of a partnership, a PPP partnership between Horizon Group and a public company called Mawarid. Horizon is owned by Sheikh Baha al-Hariri. The Hariri group are very well known to have participated a lot in the regeneration of the Beirut downtown Solidaire. That's why their input was quite valuable. Mawarid was the government side giving all the support that such a project would need. It's a 50-50 joint venture. It started, as I said, about 10 years ago. There were some delays, such as the 2008 crisis, the Arab Spring that pushed us to make the official launch June 2014. This is where you assisted to that launch. This project went through various stages. First stage was, of course, the master planning of the project and the land usage, followed by the infrastructure stage, whereby everything was set up. The marketing and sales phase, especially for the phase one of the project. What you have seen today that's already up and running is the phase one of the project. I'll give you more details later on. Phase two is something that we're still planning ahead. We, as Abdali, this partnership between the government and Horizon, we have decided to keep 25% of the project to show our long-term commitment to it. This is translated into the boulevard, the pedestrian area, as well as the mall of Abdali. That's still ours, and it's going to remain so. Then we had the surrounding areas of the boulevard and the mall were sold for private developers that came and built different types of buildings and developments. Banks moved their headquarters there. Hospitals are opening, retail shops, etc. And then we are planning the future phase, the phase two of our project, which is quite a dynamic process right now, depending on the trends. Stuff that we've learned during those past 48 hours here will definitely have a big effect on our planning.
Thank you. So, Paul, you spent a lot of time on Wall Street, Goldman Sachs, all of those sorts of investments, and now, you completely switched gear, and you're leading a whole new revolution in bringing health and wellness into the physical constructed world where we live, work, and play increasingly. Tell us about the Well Building Standard, the Institute, and what's happening with Delos Living now to actually transform the sustainability to take us to the new level of health and wellness.
Absolutely. Well, honored to be here. Thanks, Deborah. The Well Building Standard is a culmination of about 5 years of research looking to best understand how any built environment is impacting us as people. We think of green building and all the focus on environmental impact, which makes perfect sense. It's time to have a complement and also look at biological impact and understand biological sustainability in the built environment. The Well Building Standard was introduced on our behalf by former President Bill Clinton at the Clinton Global Initiative a few years ago. There are over 200 projects deploying this certification program around the world in 12 countries. This is, again, how to understand how to infuse preventative medical intentions into the way we design spaces. This room right now is having an impact on your cardiovascular health, your respiratory health. The lighting you're receiving right now is going to impact the way you sleep tonight. We assembled doctors from the Mayo Clinic, Harvard Medicine, Cleveland Clinic, and finally got them to speak to architects. And I was pretty shocked to understand that doctors and architects never really had a conversation before. And so a 5-year effort of academic, medical, political vetting led to the culmination of a process called WELL certification, which is being administered by the U.S. Green Building Council as a complement to LEED certification, and we believe it to be the next step in sustainable building practices. Just 3 weeks ago, we launched the new initiative now, the WELL Community Standard, which is taking WELL buildings to the next level, and we'll show a quick video on that introduction.
I hope our video is going to come up now.
as we're waiting for the video, I'll describe a bit more what well building is all about. So we are seeing corporate headquarters adopt this at a rapid pace. Google's headquarters in Chicago, Macquarie's headquarters in Sydney. Corporations are starting to understand that by putting what amounts to be less than 1% more premium to original or normal construction costs, we can design and create homes and offices and schools that work on categories like air and light and water, nourishment, fitness, comfort, and mind. Those are the 7 categories of the standard. And again, as you may be familiar with green building and LEED certification, which has been implemented into over 12 billion square feet in the world in 156 countries, the same organization that administers LEED is now also administering WELL certification. So this is created and housed in what we call the International Well Building Institute, and in a partnership with the U.S. Green Building Council, we're deploying WELL certification as the next step in building practices. As we continue to wave, oh, here we go.
Now, our final new commitment announcement is, I think, a particularly interesting one, which I hope will have many replications throughout not only the United States, but the world. This one is called Building Healthy Communities, the world's first well city district. I'd like to invite to the stage Paul Scialla of Delos Living, Bob Buckhorn, the mayor of Tampa, Florida, Jeff Venick of Strategic Property Partners, and Robbie Fritz of Cascade Investment. Today, more than half the global population is already residing in cities. The physical spaces where we live, work, and play influence our level of physical activity, social interaction, and our health. A simple example cited by the Centers for Disease Control. Inaccessible sidewalks contribute to inactivity, which leads to poor health outcomes, including increased obesity, cardiovascular disease, and diabetes. In response to this challenge, Delos Living is committed to creating the WELL Community Standard, a design certification focused exclusively on creating an urban environment to support human health and wellness. Building on their existing R&D capabilities, Delos will engage additional design and health experts in a peer review process to move beyond a building-based approach to the larger neighborhood and community scale. Partnering with Strategic Property Partners, Cascade Investment, and the city of Tampa, Florida. They will invest and construct a $2 billion, 40-acre urban mixed-use development in order to pilot this innovative model for urban development, one that would be good for our campaign against climate change and good for the health of the people who live in the building and walk the neighborhoods. Let's give them a big hand.
This is a very scalable and shareable formula. The well building standard itself, as I mentioned, was about a 5-year effort combining that private sector IQ that had never really spoken to the development community, the medical IQ. Once that was launched publicly a year ago, 200 projects, like I said, have signed up, encompassing about 50 million square feet, commercial office spaces, residences, homes, what have you. This now WELL community standard is that next level. The city of Tampa, Florida will become the first WELL certified city district in the world. And there's a pilot program now looking to assemble 10 to 15 more cities to join and become the handful of first WELL certified districts in the world.
You know, Paul, before we get into some other questions and discussion here, I want to just ask you, we heard yesterday how so many of these innovations are hard to adopt because the issue is there a need? Things are fine as they are. Why do we need to invest and go to the next level? What is actually the cost structure for both refitting and moving to a WELL certified building? Is this something that is exorbitant? Is this something developers and owners want to say, we don't need that now, or how do you get it going?
Well, I got to tell you, I would not have left an 18-year career at Goldman Sachs, partnership, perfectly fine thing happening there from an economic sense, if this didn't make extraordinary sense economically. I have not come across arbitrage like this. This is costing, as I mentioned, less than 1% more to build well. If you had told me this was going to be 10, 15, 20% cost premium, I probably still would have banked on the fact that people, at the end of the day, should be concerned most with their own health and well-being, that of their family. If they can buy homes and they know that their children are breathing purified air, are having circadian appropriate lighting, which is balancing their sleep-wake cycle, purified water, posture supportive flooring, I still would have thought it made sense. But at a 1% premium, this is an extraordinary economic opportunity. We're taking the largest asset class in the world, $180 trillion of real estate, and we're infusing it with the fastest growing and arguably most important industry in the world, health and wellness. $3 trillion a year annual spend. Putting these two industries together is a massive economic potential. It also happens to have what we believe the most significant societal impact that you can have, that you can consider through real estate by delivering preventative medical intentions into our homes, into our offices, into where we send our children to school.
Thank you. You know, let's go to King Economic City that we're here. What is the significance, Fahd, of being close to KAEC? Because we're all aware of KAEC. President Jean-Louis Chameau is here with us. Having such a preeminent now global university so contiguous to King Abdullah Economic City, do you see that as a powerful anchor for this generic growth that's occurring now that you have the infrastructure well underway?
Dr. Chameau is not here. It's good.
He
I can say what I want.
He was here just a moment ago, but...
Actually, the formula for building a great city is quite simple. They say, establish a great university and wait 200 years. The good thing is we don't have 200 years, so we already have a great university, and that will help us a lot. So it's very important, actually, to leverage academia as part of building the city. It's a very important part of the community, but so is, by the way, art and culture. It's about creating vibrancy. I talked earlier about it's not about the concrete, and I really meant it. If you focus on the concrete, you miss the whole point. And most of governments who have built cities top-down, I can give you many examples, but I don't want to say names, have built cities without spirits. Because they focus on the top-down, get the architect, gets the master planner, let's start building. And they start building these massive, beautiful buildings, but then they forget little things that make our lives so wonderful. Retail, for example, right? It's one of the, this is how we interact with the city, the beautiful walkways that have people on them, the place for the food trucks to go. So, these are all sort of bottom-up ideas and entrepreneurship areas that you have to have your population participate in building the city and making it a vibrant place where people want to live.
So, Samih, and Abdali, the whole concept of infusing this new city in the heart of Amman with the arts and music and creativity and design, I think was there from the very beginning of the concept. Are you seeing now the attraction of this artistic community that wants to come in to Abdali inside Jordan, but also in the broader region? And does that give you really a premium as you move forward in the next phase?
To be quite honest, we haven't seen that attraction yet on the ground. We've heard a lot of interest being expressed, but no, what's happening right now is really we're going through the very tough phase of injecting life into a new downtown, bringing in the retailers, attracting offices, multinational, high-quality international companies. And it's kind of a chicken and egg situation. Restaurants would be waiting for the offices to fill up, and vice versa. Hotels are waiting for the clients to come in. Add to that the instability in the surrounding countries. things have been quite slow. I would have preferred to be on a much higher percentages in tenants, in occupancy, etc. But what we do have as a very positive, surprising thing that's going on, the existing Rotana Hotel Arjan that has opened since 2014 has been on average doing the 90% occupancy, which is quite attractive. And slowly, by word of mouth, by all our activities and promotional efforts, Abdali is becoming one of the landmarks in Jordan. I have been stopped the other day by a lady driving her car asking, where is Solidaire? You know, everybody knows that right now you can go to Jordan, visit the Dead Sea, Petra, and Abdali. It's also now on the map. So on the art side, it's still not there yet.
You know, I had the opportunity a couple of weeks ago to visit Detroit after having not been there for 3 years. And I think we're all aware that Detroit is a city that has gone through tremendous economic disruption, collapse, loss of its population. Some of us in the room who were at a meeting the Council on Competitiveness had there in 2012 in Dearborn at Ford's headquarters, driving through the city, seeing abandoned properties, lots. It was, you know, pretty devastating, quite frankly. And then, of course, to see the recent bankruptcy and the issue of how governance and all of that complexity that brought Detroit to where it is, including, you know, the globalization and shifts. But having been there about 3 weeks ago, a renaissance is underway in Detroit. And buildings that were vacant are not only now occupied, there are condominiums that are fetching, you know, tremendous prices, and there's a new vibrancy. And I asked my colleagues, what in the world has happened? 2 things they said that was very interesting. Quicken, you know, the software company, the CEO moved his headquarters by design into the city center of Detroit and created a whole new operation there. And with the Windsor Bridge with Canada and that whole software cluster, now for the first time, Detroit is attracting a whole new generation of young technology leaders, and they're creating now the art scene, the Motown music. It's all come back. And so there was an anchor there, really, that sort of turns this around, in addition, you know, to the hardcore auto industry that's also in the innovation space with batteries and materials and things. So, you know, turning to both of these cities, in the case of King Abdullah Economic City, you mentioned so many companies coming in to create their headquarters. What was the turning point that really was either the critical mass or enabled you to have pretty serious growth? I mean, when we drove in the other night, we saw all the, you know, major corporations that are here. How did that begin to happen? Was it sui generis, or was there something you did to stimulate it and start that investment of people and new infrastructure that's coming from the private sector?
Well, it's about, I think, offering, as a private sector entity, we don't have a, you know, sort of, here is our product, take it or leave it. We develop bespoke solutions for every company. Each company has a global competitive landscape. They need to worry about so many aspects. But let me go back to this area of running cities. I think governance of cities all around the world is broken. We either appoint mayors or we elect them. We politicize the role, and the role is an executive role. Your role as head of a city is to clean the streets. Your role as the head of the city is to serve the residents, to serve the businesses. It's an executive role. And therefore, if you cannot give feedback to that executive, or if you give it in the election of a mayor every 6 years, then you don't have an operating city. You have a politicized city. And by the way, for me to get elected, I have to raise money, I have to create interest, right? And then I have to serve them afterwards. So I think this politicization of cities is a problem, and also is appointment, by the way. So what we're doing in KAEC, and that's, I think, will be quite a revolution in our, not a revolution in that sense, but a revolution in the way we operate cities, is that we are separating the development and the ownership from the operation. So we're actually creating an operating entity every company that owns something in the city actually gets a stock in the new company of operation. We have an annual assembly. They elect a board. That board then appoints an executive. That executive then has to publish financial statements. The company does not self-perform anything on operation. It always bids them out, so you get the best cost. You see what it costs. You start paying fees. You know what's going on. And if you don't like it, guess what? Change the board. Change the executive. That, I think, is this feedback loop that is created through a more private sector approach to it is a very interesting way of optimizing city operations.
So we're hearing from you this afternoon, and we'll, when we visit tomorrow, we'll see this in reality, but you're describing a whole kind of first ever new model for the governance of a new city.
It is new and it is a bit old. It's one you've seen, which is, apartment buildings have ownership councils or whatever. But also a corporation, by the way, is the most ubiquitous form of democracy in the world today, right? It's all of them. You have stock, you have, it's very well regulated around the world. And so offering that same model to a city operation, which again, I don't think is a political area. I think it's an operational, executive execution kind of area, and you have to create KPIs, and you have to. So we are actually giving city operation back to the residents. We're creating an app right now that allows the resident to supervise everything in the city. They can tell us what is broken, what is not working. They will send us a picture of the pothole that they just saw, or somebody that's not, an area that's not clean. And guess what? It gets logged. We know exactly when it's clean because we have to report back on them. So we know who's not doing their job. Everybody gets paid. In every city, there's somebody who's just not doing their job. So that is the approach we are taking about governance in this, I think, new model, as you have mentioned, that is adopted from other models that already work.
So it's really a hybrid, in a way, of taking what was actually very successful in a corporate real estate management structure and corporate generalization, but then applying it to the governance of this new entity. So Paul, what made the mayor of Tampa decide to lead the United States in having the first well-certified city?
This was a project very much along the lines of what was just said, which I think is brilliant. It's got to be driven by the private sector. This project is a partnership that was backed by Jeffrey Vinnick and Cascade Investments. Cascade is the private investment arm of Bill Gates. So this is a $2 billion project competing for, as you mentioned, against or with cities like Detroit and all over the United States. They're looking to draw organically a reason to have such a metropolis. This will complete the Tampa skyline along the waterfront. And the real goal here is to give corporations a reason to come. Their thought, including the public sector, the mayor was fully supportive, but particularly from the private sector, their thought was they needed an edge. They needed some type of theme that was different. Creating a wellness-themed city district that had a lot of technical validation to it was that hook. We are currently seeing about 30% of the Fortune 100 corporations well-certifying or looking to well-certify their headquarters. And they're constantly asking us, where will you be seeing new well-certified buildings, because that's where we're going to want to put our employees. So Tampa took that commitment one step further and is able to offer anywhere within that district an assurance that corporate offices will be well-certified. It is raising a lot of eyebrows, and corporations have a reason now to look at this versus other cities. So to your question, full support from the mayor. But this is really private sector driven, which, as you mentioned, it has to be.
So it also becomes a huge brand. It's an inducement. You think of universities and our children going to universities, and certainly in the United States, there's been this whole movement for universities to provide all of these facilities and things that, at least in my day, we didn't have, because we felt it was all right to live in a tiny little dorm and not have any light and all of that. But I think the university education space, as well as hospitals, is huge also for the WELL standard.
Humongous. As an example, a practical example, we are not built to be inside. For thousands of years, we've lived outside. Okay, and then we started building these boxes around ourselves and spending 90% of our time indoors. In places like this, 99% of our time indoors. What's happening is, well, first off, in 70% of the square footage on Earth, indoor air quality is worse than outdoor air quality. Air gets stagnant. People think they're inside and they're protected from pollution. Lighting is fascinating. This type of lighting right now is, as I mentioned, is entering your circadian optic nerve. It's regulating your entire sleep-wake cycle. It's got nothing to do with vision. This circadian optic nerve takes in light. We're not supposed to be getting this kind of light. We're supposed to be getting a very rich, bright, bluish type of light called the sky. And that boosts our elements and hormones for productivity and mental acuity, and it suppresses things like melatonin. And then when it gets dark, that optic nerve tells us to start creating melatonin, reduce those other hormones, and we start preparing for sleep. That's our natural circadian rhythm. The well-building standard researches and provides protocols that are effectively costless to have appropriate lighting indoors. Okay, with LED technology, we can choose any color, lux, hue, temperature of light. And we now finally have doctors telling us what's appropriate lighting, so we're not put to sleep during the day. So we then need to overcompensate with coffee and sugars, leading to type 2 diabetes and obesity. It's all about light. Light is medicine, and the well-building standard is finally a document that demonstrates in a very shareable, scalable way to developers and contractors and architects how to consider what's happening to our bodies when we're inside.
So the next time, wherever we're going to be, and we're not sure yet, who will be our next host for the 2016 GFCC annual meeting in the world, but maybe it's putting you a little bit on the spot, but if we were able to go to a well-certified building, hotel, do you think none of us would have jet lag?
I think we could do a lot to consider how to eliminate jet lag within about an hour with the appropriate circadian lighting. Scientifically proven, by the way, and we're putting this programming into hotel rooms. But yeah, we should be well certifying the next venue. The good news is this works for new building and also existing buildings. About 30% of that 50 million square foot pipeline is actually taking existing occupied buildings and getting them to become well certified without a major renovation. These are minor adjustments structurally and operationally that can make a huge difference.
So I think our colleagues that are here from the Emirates and from Japan, you know, that are going to be hosting the Olympics and hosting Expo 2020, I'm looking back at you, Shaina. We got to have the well certification there, so we'll go for the first Expo and the first Olympics in the world where we can go and be in healthy places. Back to Abdali, you mentioned, Samih, about, you know, the challenges in the region and how this has affected, you know, the development and things. But at the opening of the boulevard, the King and Queen of Jordan were there. They were very proud. Have you really experienced any difficulties and barriers from the government side in terms of regulatory permits and the ability to actually go into a center city and start from kind of ground zero to transform this? Because it's often harder to do that, as you said, than start from scratch.
Or quite the opposite. In fact, we are getting a lot of support from the government. His Majesty King Abdullah has surrounded himself by an amazing team of young economists that are really upgrading the entire country, and Abdali being one of their landmarks, they're giving it full support. On my board of directors, we have always had the mayor of Amman sitting as a board member, which is a big plus. I mean, he's been helping us, supporting us at all levels. The PPP system that we're going through is definitely a successful one so far.
So I know we have a little bit of compressed time because of our next panel. And for those of you who were with us yesterday, who had a little bit of trust and stayed through the day for our incredible experience with Peter Myers, we're going to have part 2, Peter Myers 2.0, before we conclude and have our beautiful dinner tonight that you're so kindly hosting for us. So I want to give our wonderful panelists and our innovators of cities of the future really an opportunity to give anything you want to say about the lessons learned or a message to all of us that, if we look forward in the next few years, where you'll be or what we should be doing, and why is this really at the heart of competitiveness? So, Paul, you're at the end, so we'll start with you.
Sure. So briefly, I would say that when considering how to differentiate, when considering how to build a product that people are going to want, whether it's an office space or a home, marble or granite or design, that's all nice. But health and wellness is probably the ultimate luxury. If you can educate people on how they can work on their own health, well-being, and prospects for longevity for themselves, their employees, that's a huge differentiator. From a competitiveness standpoint, clearly if we can keep people healthy and productive, we can compete, and that's just a clear line.
Thank you. And I'm just going to interject and ask you one other comment and thought here. I know from what you've told me, you're also innovating in some of these frontier technologies, whether it's in nanotechnology or biotech. Could you how does that just integrate again into the health and wellness beyond the standard setting itself?
Yeah, the standard is one body of work, and then clearly as you have these conditions you're looking to prescribe towards, you need the solutions. And that's where Delos comes back into play. Having moved that body of knowledge into the International Well-Building Institute, Delos continues on as an innovation platform, a think tank, and a technology entity to continue to stay ahead of the curve on these solutions.
Thank you. Mr. Fahd.
Well, I think, we want to think of ourselves as having a globally best-in-class master plan that we've designed the city for the future, a future-proof 21st century city. And that, to a large extent, is very true. We've actually changed the master plan 4 times over the past 10 years. But I can tell you right now that nobody knows what 21st century city looks like, because the Internet of Things, the sharing economy, the driverless cars, these will change the way we think of cities and how they are organized. So right now, I'm thinking very, very hard about how this master plan needs to change for a 5th time in order to accommodate the change in the global picture economically.
But I think that's part of the innovation model, that it is something that is always dynamic, and you're improvising and changing and adapting and being very resilient of how the future is going to unfold.
Yep.
Thank you. Samih.
Final word. Well, I believe out of experience, we had to show our partners and developers that we are with them, standing by them, even though they went through some tough times during the past 4 years. We never implemented any penalties. We just stood by them, showed them that we're in there for the long term. It's really a marathon, not a sprint that we're looking for. And they are really appreciating that and repaying us in many different ways. So I think this is the way to go.
And you're looking for the long term, the continuity of
Absolutely.
your commitment and the investment. Well, I know we spoke last night about the potential of having a council on competitiveness in Jordan.
That's true.
So hopefully, inshallah, in a few years, the GFCC perhaps will be in Amman and be with you in Abdali.
I'll be working on it as of next week, that's for sure.
Let me thank our fantastic panel of innovators of cities of the future.
Thank you.